and this video will be posted on the town's YouTube channel tomorrow.
Excellent. So I'm sharing the agenda, and we'll get started now. Call to order the Town of Oline WPCA meeting. From the WPCA committee, we have Andrea Lombard, Doug Wilkinson, and Joe Carpentino, who have excused absences. The other WPCA members that are here are James Burge, Frank Chan, Steve Tsunami, and Dmitry Tolchinsky, and Rob McCarthy. So with that, I'd like approval of the minutes from July 14th. If someone could make a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Dimitri made a motion. Somebody want to second that? WPCA member?
I'll second the motion.
Frank seconded it. Open discussion. Does anyone have any changes, edits, issues with the minutes from July 14th? Hearing none. Is there a question or a comment? Okay, hearing none. All those WPCA members, if you could say aye, and let's try raising your hand.
Aye.
I'm not sure why there's a echo.
There's backfeed somewhere. Feedback.
Okay.
I put my phone down, so.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably, that could have been it. All right. All those in favor of the minutes, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. Moving on to the budget. The budget is fine. We did not spend a lot of our money from last year. We put in our request for what we needed for carryovers, which is part of the items on the Board of Finance meeting tonight, along with every other board commission in the town of Old Lyme. I expect to get some legal bills coming forward. I've had some legal bills put in front of Doug and myself and Frank Chan, and we're working with Tim Griswold, the first selectman, to itemize and categorize some of these expenses. Not that we're trying to avoid paying our share. We're not. We're just trying to make sure which ones are which so we can assign them to the right project. Some of these will be used for reimbursement from the state of Connecticut's Clean Water Funds application. Some of these will be reimbursed from the private beach associations as far as work done for them on their behalf. And it was just put in for WPCA issues, which probably is just a clarification so we can figure out who ends up paying for what. The invoices were not that material. I don't think they were not over our budget in any way. So it's a little premature for me to bring them to everyone and say what they are. So the other thing is we'll get into the further down in the number 4 business, but I'll just say that we did cut a check for the agreement to join the cost sharing agreement, which is probably the biggest check ever for us, $66,609, I believe. And that check is in Tim Griswold's possession. And when he is ready to organize the signing of the documents needed, the check will be handed over at that time. Are there any questions about the budget update and expenses from WPCA members? Okay. Hearing none, let's get into the main part of our business. The item 4, the Soundview Sewer Project Miscellaneous Areas B, the status of the cost sharing agreement discussions. I'll give you an overall status that we have had discussions with the City of New London's WPCA and their Director of Utilities for the purposes of developing an IMA. Let me step back a bit. The cost sharing agreements, we have essentially agreed to the agreement of the cost sharing agreement. That's what the check was for. The private beach associations, this is to share infrastructure and save significant money for them and for us. It would cost us a lot of money, maybe even millions, if we didn't have this sharing strategy. Part of that also is that they agree to help us get the IMAs, the intermunicipal agreements with neighboring towns, amended. And we had discussions with the City of New London, WPCA, and their Director of Utilities. The discussions were not simple and easy, and it's just essentially that they're trying to find the right agreements to amend the existing agreements and move forward. We're also planning on having the similar discussions with East Lyme. And at this point, I'm going to stop and say, I don't know, Frank, if you want to add anything more about this topic, feel free to speak up, because Frank's been involved in this as well.
Yeah, just to recap for everybody, currently there are two IMAs between one is between the private beach associations with New London, and another one between the private beach associations with East Lyme. We have met with East Lyme with the former select woman last year, and I also discussed with email with the current selectman regarding joining the East Lyme IMA. Both towns are agreeable for the town of Old Lyme to join with 50,000 gallons per day of capacity under the terms that is agreed upon by the current TBA East Lyme IMA. Similarly, for New London, I think the next step is for the PBA to request New London for them to exercise the option to include Soundview into the existing agreement. The existing agreement has 180,000 gallons per day of capacity reserve. The Old Lyme portion would be 50,000, so it's ample capacities to include the town of Old Lyme at this point. We're negotiating some of the details. There may be some economic adjustment associated with us joining the New London IMA through the Public Beach Association. So in terms of the, go ahead. Okay.
Was there a question?
Is that a question? Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
In general, if you could mute your phone when you're not speaking, and if you want to speak, unmute your phone, and we'll try and take that as a signal that you want to speak. And then you can say something. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Okay. So both IMAs are.
Rich comes to the meeting. Rich writes his name down in his email address.
Caller user 6 is speaking.
But
Jennifer, could you mute that caller?
Members anymore.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I guess after 6 months of being on WebEx, we still have to teach etiquette. Anyway, both IMAs are in pretty good conditions, and the terms that we're seeking would be the terms as defined in the current IMAs. So we just want to pay the fair amount that the Public Beach Association is paying to for the IMA, and the Public Beach Association is agreeable to that. That's all I have.
So I'd like to add a little comment to just prepare WPCA members. It is likely that we get the agreement that we want, or some modified or similar agreement that we think is acceptable. we will likely have either in the September meeting, an executive session to discuss the details of the agreement. So every WPCA member has to be able to review what the impact is. Or we might have a special meeting sooner than that if it becomes an urgent matter. And right now, I can't tell if it's going to be an urgent matter between now and September or not, as far as those agreements. So just preparing members for that. Obviously, I'll communicate to everybody and put posting on the town website as well. And what that would be is probably an executive session to discuss the terms of the draft agreement, then come out of executive session and ask for a motion to accept the contracts, and go from there. So now we're at the point of design considerations. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to try to stop sharing. Oh, I see share website. Oh, the stop sharing button. So at this time, I'd invite Jason from Wood and Curran, Jen Kaitis. Did I say that
Yes.
right?
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you. He's got a short presentation. As I understand it, some design considerations for the Soundview sewer projects, and I guess some things for us to think about and maybe discuss. And I don't think that there's a motion in this, but it's possibly we can have a discussion about direction. So, Jason, are you able to share the presentation?
Yes, let me attempt to do that. You'll see the aerial view of the beach.
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time. We've been working on this project for a couple of months now. Wanted to give a quick update on what we've been doing. As Rich noted, we have a few high-level design considerations. Wanted to give you a sneak preview of the first deliverable we'll be sending later this month, and then talk about the overall schedule at the end, and then take any questions at the end. So progress, what have we been doing so far? We got started beginning of the summer. You may have seen this blue drill rig out along the street, taking some test borings for the work so we can get an idea of the soil conditions. All that drilling work is done. All the field work associated with the survey is done. And then all the wetlands delineation is done. So those are three important components to making our base design plans, getting that all ready. So we're reviewing those now, making sure they're 100% complete, going to some back and forth with the subcontractors in terms of any missing information, but we're making good progress on that.
Jason, this is Rich Pendergast. Is it okay if I ask questions through this?
Absolutely. Yep.
So you're on the survey part, and the WPCA members should know that a letter was sent out asking, I don't know if this is the same survey that you're referring to in this bullet, but a letter was sent out signed by Tim and myself asking for details about individual residents' septic system pipe location, completely voluntary. But I just want to ask a question to Jason. Should some residents feel that they don't want to respond on principle or for various reasons? The lack of response doesn't stop the project, but is there a financial impact, or how strong do we need that information?
Right. Yeah. We don't expect to get 100% of those surveys back. We never do. Typically we'll get more like 50 to 75%. So where there are gaps, certain residents we don't get a response from, no matter how many attempts are made. What we can do is look at the neighboring houses. Sometimes, there's several houses that were built at the same time, might have similar interior plumbing. So, we use what information we have available to us to basically use our engineering judgment and estimate where best to put the lateral for that particular property.
And Jason, if I may, it's Jay Sheehan from Woodard and Curran. I just want to add that it is fine, absolutely fine if we don't get that information. But at the same time, that information actually helps that resident. Because what we're doing is we're designing a sewer in front of the house, and then we're picking a connection point. If they don't tell us where their septic is, we're guessing, as Jason said. We'll do our best guess, our best approximation based on information, of others. But that pipe may be a longer run for them to their bathrooms. It may be a longer, it doesn't help them. It doesn't serve them. It definitely doesn't stop the project, but doesn't help them.
Yeah,
it potentially makes it a lot harder to make that connection in the future if it's coming out the opposite side of where we think it might be coming out, then it's more work for them to eventually connect.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. I tried to explain that to some of the people that I saw that just were against it. But their choice, and I'm not going to force them. And like you said, you make your best guess approximation. The pipe's going to go in the ground near their house.
And I'll add one more thing. This is again Jay Sheehan from Woodard and Curran. If we don't get the right information, that's usually a cost borne upon the resident because they're going to have to plumb everything in their yard. We in the WPCA handle everything in the street and the connection from the yard to the street. That's just a small, but there is potential impact on them, not necessarily the WPCA.
Thank you.
Right. And building on Jay's point, one feedback we got from a concerned resident was if they return that, does that immediately give the WPCA permission to connect to the house, which is not the case. This is for our planning documents, and any final connection would be based on the private property owner in their coordination with the drain layer to make that final connection.
Good. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Who?
Can I make a comment? Yeah, this is Steve.
Oh, Steve. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so we should make it clear to everyone that everyone is going to have a stub to their house, to one side, the other, in the middle, but each property is going to have a sewer stub from the main line to basically their curb line, in which they'll have to tie in. So whether they provide us any information or not, they'll all have a stub ready to tie in, so that they don't have to go into the road. I believe that's how I've always done.
Well,
sewer work.
the letter tries to explain that. And I tried to explain it to at least one resident who just really, is not logical, I guess.
Right. But I guess if they're thinking we're going to connect, we are going to bring a line. We don't connect them, but we connect the sewer to their curb.
Well, the resident I'm thinking of basically thought that if they don't respond, then they don't have to participate in the sewers, and I told them that that's false. So
right.
just the way Jay and Jason said, the line's going by their house. If they're in the sewer project, they're in the sewer project. If there's more information about where their property is, then it's probably helpful, and they can factor that into design. Maybe not. I don't know.
Right.
But if it's some crazy weird thing, who knows? Maybe there's something that becomes more expensive.
Jay, do you check the town records to see where the septic system is? I mean, that would be a good indication of where the pipe comes out.
Yes.
So yes, right. Yes. Town records aren't great. Just tell you, they're not great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You want to continue, Jason?
Sure.
Jason, it's Pete Jandersevitz, technical manager from Wood and Curran. Can I just follow up a little bit more on those service connections? What we try to do is we provide those services and those stubs to the property line at the downstream side of the property if we do not have the exact location and where the connection comes out. That way, we take an assumption to make sure that we're deep enough to accommodate them on the downstream side. So that's our approach on how we provide these service connections. So if we don't get them, it's not a big deal. Again, it's a benefit to them, not so much to us. So I just want to reiterate that so you guys understand how we think about the design.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks. Okay. So yeah, a lot of this discussion will take place in our preliminary or basis of design report. We have an internal draft of that ready right now. I was looking at it today. Jay will be reviewing it. Several other senior people will be reviewing it before it goes to the WPCA. So that includes discussion like we just had on some of the laterals, summary of wetlands that we found, summary of the geotech investigations. We'll also include some preliminary sewer layouts, both horizontal and vertical, which will lead into the next slide, some of our early design considerations in terms of the overall depth and what the cost impacts of the various design considerations might be. Finally, we had coordination with others. We'd already talked about the property survey that's been gone out, that went out to all the residents. We've also been in touch with Fuss & O'Neill on the shared infrastructure, namely the pump station, the force main, and the interceptor sewer down by the beach. And then also in contact with Connecticut Water regarding their new, the water line construction that's been ongoing over the past year or so in the same area as us. Want to make sure we have the latest information from them in terms of their layout in relation to ours. So moving on, so this was really the the meat of the presentation. What we wanted to give you some early feedback on. One of the major design considerations is on some of the outlying areas of both miscellaneous town area B and the Soundview Beach down by the coastline. There's a couple of different options. What happens if we go with all gravity sewer to get these outlying areas, which sometimes are downslope from the center part of the study area? It ends up driving a gravity sewer very deep, which has cost implications, both in terms of construction, the lower production rates in terms of how deep the excavation has to be. There's also cost implications in terms of dewatering, especially in an area like this that has sandy soils and has high groundwater. The deeper you go, the more expensive it gets to deal with that groundwater. And also long-term O&M implications in terms of infiltration and general maintenance. Things get more complex, more expensive the deeper you get. So we've identified a few different alternatives to possibly address that. One would be using what's called a low pressure sewer. Back during the CWMP phase, we investigated going with all low pressure versus going with all gravity. We're not revisiting that. We still want to do primarily a gravity system, but there is a possibility of some cost savings if we potentially went with a low pressure system on some of these outlying areas. We'll get more into this in the next slide, but what that is essentially a small individual pump station at each house, which allows, it's a smaller diameter connection. It can also be shallower, and most importantly, you can also pump uphill to the gravity connection in the center of the area. So in some limited areas, there would be a cost savings associated with going with a individual grinder pump. The other alternative we identified is if we take away the jurisdictional lines between the beach associations and the WPCA, especially like this area, Gorton Ave. If we were sewering this entire area, there'd be no reason to come down to shore, up to Swan, and then down. You would just come right down Gorton Ave all the way to the beach, and then come across with the interceptor sewer that's going to go in there. That the complication there obviously is instead of having a self-contained sewer, we're essentially tying into the beach association sewer. So,
Jason,
yep.
This is Rich. If I could just say something about that section right there.
Yep.
We're surprised that that's not part of Old Colony, but it's not part of Old Colony. On the top right corner, your circle there, having that pipe go straight down into Old Colony, even though the roads look like they're extensions of the roads, they're not part of Old Colony. But what I think you're saying is it's alternative number 2, a gravity sewer. The pipe from those houses goes straight down and connects to the Old Colony, which is beneath it, and it goes gravity feed down to eventually to the pump house. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Continue on.
How many residents are we talking about there?
I haven't counted them, but a handful.
Yeah, up in the upper right hand, there's maybe 7 or 8 up here, and then there's 2 or 3 over in this corner. The complication over here is there's an existing 24-inch storm drain that runs right through here. That in order to get under that to serve these last 2 houses, it drives this line a lot deeper. Down by the beach, that's where it's more dense. That's more like 25 to 27 houses. That could potentially either go with the low pressure, or the other alternative would be to tie directly into the 10-inch that's being designed by Fuss and O'Neill that leads directly to the pump station.
So that lower one, I think, is interesting because, one, there's supposed to be a collection pipe from the neighboring beaches going through there. And it seems like that would be it'd be gravity feed from the houses on the water into that collection pipe. And then the non-yellow to the left is part of, I believe, Miami, and they're having the sewers put in. So I guess what I'm pointing out is, and forgive me if you guys already gone through this because you're the engineers who've been looking at this, is coordinating that with Miami to see what they're doing, to see how they're going to service those houses that are essentially next to the houses that you're identifying. So.
Right, and their collector sewer runs right through here. It would be, from a technical perspective, it'd be very simple to tie those houses in with a gravity connection. The question becomes, in terms of the cost sharing, the metering of those flows. Originally we were trying to lay it out so that we had a single metering location for both Town Area B and the Soundview Beach area. So now if we have multiple connection points to the shared infrastructure, we either have, multiple metering locations, or, could something be worked out, based on equivalent dwelling units that are, some of these smaller connections.
So you're right. And some of those properties are commercial properties, and they might want to have a meter for their own point of view. But others are residences, and I can tell you the discussions we've had with the private beach associations. The whole plan says that we will be monitoring our stuff. So I guess I don't know how expensive the meters are, but the meters also have to be calibrated twice a year as part of the potential contracts in the future.
Right. Yeah. The meters themselves, the capital cost of the meters is not, all that significant in terms of the overall project. But yes, the more meters you have, you're going to have more O&M costs, down the road if you have to maintain, say, 3 to 5 meters as opposed to 1 meter.
Yeah. Perfect world we do not live in.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I've had a couple more time to look at this than the other WPCA members. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get this to you sooner. But this is a good discussion. And I think, Jason, what you're saying is you have 3 options up here, and you need direction.
Yeah, we don't need to make any final decisions tonight, but if you have any early feedback, if a connection to Old Colony Beach is just a non-starter, then we won't pursue that any further. Or we can lay each of these options out in more detail in the design basis report. But yeah, we wanted to give you at least some advance discussion of that before we submit the final report.
Okay, so I've got a couple opinions and then open it up for WPCA members to ask questions and comments. The top left is a commercial building and maybe two commercial buildings, I think. And I don't know how to deal with that. That might be possible for a pump system. I don't like the idea of pump systems because after just spending 4 or 5 days trying to keep the food in my refrigerator cold while we waited for power to come back on, we'd hate for someone to have that scenario where they can't use their toilets when the power's out. I mean, some people that have wells had that problem to some degree. The houses to the right, on the top right, I think we can have a discussion with the private beach associations, and in general, the concept of if we're metering, then I don't think they'll have a problem with it. And in the bottom, I have no idea, because I would think that's also could be the same concepts. The discussions we've had with the private beach associations all been if we can share our costs fairly and upfront and transparent, then we're okay with it. It makes it a little bit more complex, but I'm sure there's septic systems or sewer systems that have multiple meters, and we're basically going to have a meter for each beach association, as far as trying to manage who does what, because there's going to be the processing costs that have to know the volume. So with that, I'll be quiet now. I'll invite any other WPCA members to ask a question or make a comment. And you'd have to unmute your phone if you want to speak, or not your phone, unmute yourself.
This is Rob. I got a couple questions.
Go ahead, Rob.
So one is metering. Is it possible to do something with metering the water inside, or at least use that information? Because if they all have a water supply and a meter on that side, could that be correlated to the sewer discharge? And I realize that the southern area that may not work with the businesses as well, but the residential properties to the north.
We could bring that up. I mean, I from the point of view of the private beach associations agreeing to some kind of extrapolation of the costs, we could have that discussion to see if they'd accept that. And the pros and cons of that is if someone waters their lawn, they're paying more money for let's say if they watered their lawn a lot, they're paying more to water the lawn and process the septic system or sewage. So.
Right, that's where you'd end up having to use some sort of correlation, they would also, on the beach areas, would also know if there's less flow than what they figured based on the calculation. But I know it's a whole different topic, but I was just wondering if that's a way to handle at least the residential areas.
We definitely can bring that up with them. I don't know what they'll think of that. I know that they're not using water to manage their charges. Old Colony has talked about some kind of variable pricing, but it's just a discussion.
Yeah, the other concern with individual property water metering is if you're on a private well, you probably don't have a meter, as well as any infiltration and inflow that gets into the system. So groundwater, which we will design to try to reduce as much as possible, but individually, measuring potable water use does not pick up that infiltration and inflow.
Good point.
Okay.
Any other?
So second question, actually. So for the southern area, what about the concept of just running our own gravity line from that area? Even though there's a trunk line coming through that's from the other beaches, but can we just run our own gravity line through that area and pick up our properties? And it may run next to theirs or above theirs or whatever, but is that a possibility instead of trying to meter those commercial properties that are problematic?
Jason?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It would be a possibility. They have actually obtained an easement to get from Swan over to Hartford. So there would have to be some sort of legal arrangement to run a pipe in that same easement. But yes, in concept, yeah, that would be a way to do it as well.
Hey, Rich, Jim Burge, on alternative 2, where it talks about the grinder pumps and the possibility of going that route, who covers the cost of the grinder pumps? Is that borne by the individual residents?
To tell you the truth, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. My first gut reaction is it's part of the design, and maybe it's unfair to penalize somebody because their property is has to pay a little bit more because we're saving money by putting the pipe the way
Right.
doing it. I don't know, but we'll have to figure that out.
I know in Point of Woods, that was a big contention where the individual residents paid for their grinder pumps.
Well, I don't know if that's the same scenario, but I'm sure people, when they look at one house next to another house and one has to pay and one doesn't, there better be a good reason why and what the value and benefit is to those two residents. I mean,
yeah, that is an issue that typically comes up. What we've seen done in the past. Sometimes the town or the WPCA will purchase the grinder pump and hand it over to the resident, sell it for $1, something like that. Or like you kind of alluded to, is there's a reduction in the the betterment that's charged to the property based on the fact that they have to put in a grinder.
Yeah.
So it's a political, financial decision. There's a few different ways that it can be done.
Okay.
Hello, Richard.
Yes, Dimitri.
This is Dmitry. I think we should be very careful to put grinder pumps on the properties. This is the last resort I think we have to have.
I generally agree with you because it's your whole system depends on that grinder pump working and maintenance. And do we want to sign up for the maintenance on that, or do we have the homeowner manage the maintenance?
Actually, the area that all those properties located, it's a flat area. It's not something like a hills or something else.
Okay.
And I think we have to be working together with other beaches and see how we can do it less pumps.
Okay. Any other comments about this? I mean, I'm not asking for a motion here, but it's like I said, we have to think about it.
I have some comments.
Go ahead. That's Steve.
This is Steve. Yeah. So Jason, when in order for me to make an informed decision, I would need to know the residences. How many residences or buildings are being affected. I'd also need to know the difference in depth.
Yes.
Like if you go one route versus the other. The other thing I'm against low pressure, grinder pumps. They're not, in the long run, they're not the best option. However, it may be in this case. The other thing is, on a theoretical basis, the other three beaches are measuring their flow and they don't have any interconnections. So the total flow minus the other three would be our flow. I know they want us to measure our flow, but maybe we can use that formula to take care of the ones that would be interconnected. I don't know. But in general, you're correct in saying that, tying into into the other beach association would be, you know, if it was all one project, that it's not even an issue. You can just tie in and that's it.
Right.
You know, to flow meter 10 residences seems a little ridiculous. So I don't know the solution there. But if the depth is like 2 feet different, then maybe it doesn't matter. If it's,
Well,
10
maybe
feet
the
different, then
Steve,
it does matter.
maybe it's not so much the depth for people that don't know how to do these things like you do. Maybe it's the cost that we need. Some kind of relative cost comparison.
Well, they don't know. Well, that's true. They can give an estimate on the cost. They won't know the cost until it's bid. But you know, if you're talking 5 feet on the beach, there's a significant cost increase per foot because you know the water is. This is the worst of both conditions.
Well, so like
there's water and sand.
So the I get what you're saying, and I don't want to put anyone to an exact figure, but if we say like the meter costs $100 to buy, and if we connect to the private beach associations and limit and need the meter, and that costs hardly anything, but if we don't use the meter and we do a pipe that's deeper, and it costs us $600,000 more, or something in that ballpark, magnitude of order, that's the kind of referencing I need, because I mean I don't know the depth of a pipe, what that means. I mean I understand depth of pipe and stuff, but I don't know the impact. And I get it that if it starts deep up there, it's got to finish really deep at the end. So because you got to have a certain flow and angle to keep everything moving right. So we could do that. I mean, I can reach out to the beach associations, at least the top right corner. I think I can get that to work. The top left corner, it's probably the same scenario. Well, it's probably the same scenario for all of them. So, I mean, I could reach out to the private beach associations and see if they would. I don't know if they would agree to the, we're not going to have meters and just subtract their flow from our flow or something like that. That formula, it makes sense, but I don't know if they would go for it.
They probably would still have meters. They would probably still want meters, but at least you'd have a check.
Well, it's an indirect check.
Do you really think that? Do you really think that all the 3 meters? No, I'm talking about the. Do you think that all? Let's say there are 4 meters. Do you think all 4 meters are going to tally up to the exact single flow going out, or that were billed?
It better, I think.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way: we're going to have meters. Part of the intermunicipal agreements with the neighboring towns in New London is they measure how much coming in, and then we measure how much each individual is. If there's a difference between the two, we're going to use the same percentage and spread it out. But we're hopeful that it'll be the same. Or maybe that'll be something that we work on our maintenance of the system, inflow infiltration, to see if there's more going out than coming in. If you know what I mean. If we measure what's going into the pump house from each individual neighborhood, and there's more going to New London than what's going through the process, then we know we have a problem and we can work on that. But there's kind of an issue of if the indirect, where we just like don't meter one group, and that what happens is that group now becomes the people that pay for inflow and infiltration. If you know what I mean. If I'm making any sense at all. But I could check with the private beach associations to see what they feel about this. I mean, we want the most reliable, low-cost method.
Yep. Yeah, and I think a lot of these design considerations, we've already started putting them into a table. How many grinder pumps are we talking? 2 people on grinder pumps? Are we talking 30 people on grinder pumps? And for various different options, and so we can estimate both that and then estimate the cost impacts as part of the DBR, and we'll give you a recommendation what we think is the best solution, and then we can continue this discussion. Is it feasible to depend on the beach associations to help out with the recommended plan, essentially.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay. Continue.
Okay, thanks. This next slide is kind of a summary of a lot of the things we've already discussed. It sounds like you're well familiar with low pressure sewers, but it's essentially a single family pump station that then connects to the overall town collection system. So the advantages, as we talked about, less inflow, can be lower construction costs due to the smaller diameter pipe, and more importantly, the savings in depth further downstream. As you mentioned, Rich, the property owner pays for electricity, so that means if the electricity is out, you're limited in your pumping capacity. The grinder pump manufacturers always say, well, if your power's out, you're not running your dishwasher, you're not running your washing machine. There is some capacity for some toilet flushing, but eventually it's going to fill up. And if you have no power, you either have to hook up a generator or not use the plumbing. Gravity system, as I think most of the discussion agreed to, that's the simplest long-term solution, lower long-term costs, but it can get into some higher construction costs, especially when you get deeper in sandy soils with high groundwater.
Okay. Good.
And then just an overview of the remaining project schedule. We are planning to get 30% design documents. That's our design basis report and preliminary drawings and a preliminary cost estimate by the end of August. So a couple of weeks away, that should be in your hands. We're also reviewing the shared infrastructure pump station and force main from Fuss and O'Neill. We've had that for about a month now. We're having one of our senior operators who operates pump stations for a living take a look at it from their perspective. So we're adding his comments onto our technical comments on the design of the pump station. Looking forward for the rest of the year, based on the schedule that's laid out in the contract, we'll be sending you a submittal basically once a month until we get to 100% design, which should be on target for the end of this year. And then did want to point out the bid schedule is going to be dependent on the deep review. We have to get approval from them to formally put it out to bid, and they'll be involved in reviewing the project at the various interim milestones as well. And finally, just an update on the funding status. The applications are all into deep. Laura Tessier from our office has been contacting them weekly, if not more, to check in on the status of that. So as soon as we hear anything from them, we'll be sure to let you know.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Yep.
Before we end this presentation, does anyone have any questions for Jason or anyone else from Wood & Curran? Okay, so we will move on. Thank you, Jason. You can stop sharing. So the next agenda item was for III, the benefit assessment items update. And I thought there'd be an update, but there hasn't been. We are not in a rush to do the benefit assessment updates. Part of the benefit assessment update is figuring out our costs, like the cost that Jason is talking about tonight, that then the total cost then gets spread out over the formulas that we have. We also are having a benefit assessment research done, and that's progressing, I guess, but we don't really have an update. So unless someone has any questions or concerns on the WPCA about the benefit assessment, now's your chance to ask or to make a comment. Okay, hearing none. So now we're on item 4, 4A4. and that's the review of the sewer ordinance gap with the state requirements update. So I'm going to hand the baton over to Frank, if you don't mind, Frank, if I could put you on the spot. Frank coordinated a response. I gave my comments. I don't know if anyone else gave comments. I'll just say that Frank did a fantastic job of adopting what the state told us we had to do, which is a lot of definitions, and putting it into a document. And then from there, Frank can describe and outline the process, which I think he did in an email to everyone about what we do with this. So with that, I'll be quiet, and Frank, I don't know if you want to take over.
Yeah, it's Frank Chen here. The item on the table is the Municipal Zoo Ordinance that's required by the state, since we're going to have a municipal sewer. So there's a draft document that's in accordance with the requirements promulgated by the state for us to put into our tax ordinance. There is a process of getting this through accepted. There are basically 3 steps. One, we have to post the smooth draft for public comment after the town's legal review. So that's what we have now. We have a draft, and we have not done the legal review yet. But once the WPCA makes the decision to send it over to for legal review, and if that's successful, we adjudicate all their comments, then we can post it for public comments, and that will open for a certain period. I think it's. I couldn't find a reference on it, but usually it's 30 days or so. And after the close of the public comments, we will schedule a public hearing with the proper legal notifications, such that interested folks may attend. And we'll address the scope of the ordinance, and also address any concerns that we have during the public comments period. And once we resolve all the public comments, and we're happy with the sewer ordinance, then we can motion for vote, and the ordinance would be adopted based on a majority of the WPCA votes. And usually that's a period before it becomes effective, usually about a month or so. So we do have quite a bit of time to do this. So, so tonight's possible motion is to authorize to post the Municipal Sewer Ordinance draft for public comment after satisfactory legal review by the town.
So I've read it and I've looked at it. I made some comments on it. I think it's a good document. I think it's ready. I did have a question that I don't know if the other WPCA members feel, and maybe it's appropriate for Wood and Curran to comment on. There's a part in there that has an allowance of what do they call them? They're the garbage disposal, so you can have your food in your sink and chop it up, and that normally is not allowed in a septic system because food doesn't digest the same way as the human waste does. And processing that stuff through the plant and pump station and all that stuff might be a problem too. I don't know if it is or not. But now it's stated so it's okay. I don't know if anyone wants to have a comment about garbage disposals where food processing goes into this waste stream.
And this is Jay Sham from Wood & Curran, and Jason, you feel free to comment, but technically we can handle the garbage disposal flows as you suggest. So that wouldn't, septics, you're right, can't handle it. We can with the new sewer system. So if that would be part of your sewer ordinance. You know, you guys get to decide what's in and what's not in.
So, any other comments or questions? I mean, because otherwise I think Frank is basically asking for a motion. Can we send this off for public comment, which means the public might have some good ideas and we would then take a look at those ideas. They might have some concerns. We take a look at those concerns and then we'll be editing the document again. Is that right, Frank?
Yes, that's correct. I think the first step would be for the town's legal to go through it just to make sure that we use all the right words.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
And we don't want to send it to the town's legal unless we're comfortable with, if there's somebody that has an edit or a draft or a change or something like that. I don't want to have legal do it twice and cost twice as much. So I guess if everyone's okay with it, then maybe the motion is that we send it to legal.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good choice. I think the public comment is extremely important because I think it will make the ordinance better. And I mean, there are issues that we might not have. I mean, there may be unique issues related to our town, individual houses that we can modify the ordinance to handle those situations. So I think that's an extremely important part of the process.
Any other WPCA members' comments, concerns? Hearing none. Frank asked for a motion to send it to legal, meaning that you took a look at it, or if someone wants to speak up and say, look, I want to look at it, and I'll let you know. But that means we probably have to wait till September to get that motion.
I mean, yeah, Frank Chen is. We're not in a rush. So I mean, we need more time to look at it to make sure that we present a complete document for legal to review. I think that's worth the time. Yeah, it's not that we can go on vacation anyway.
All right. So I'm not hearing a motion to send to legal. So is that a passive way of saying I want more time? I guess it is. So Frank, the next meeting in September, we will push harder for a motion.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We take the time as I think it's important. We don't want to come back and change it and spend 2 months with legal and that. We're a lot cheaper than legal. So. That's all I have.
Hey guys, could you hold on 1 second? We're having a little technical difficulty with Steve Tsunami. Jennifer, do you know which caller user is Steve? I think maybe
he was on as his own name before.
Yeah.
And I had renamed him.
Hang on 1 sec. So Steve, it looks like, well, I can't see.
There's 3 call-in users, 5, 6, and 9 that are unidentified currently.
Can you speak when it's off, Steve? Hang on, everybody, and the committee member.
Do you want me to unmute them first, though?
Why don't you unmute all the call-in users and see if we can get Steve? I thought Steve was listening. Unmuted. Can you say something, Steve? Make some noise.
Hello? Hello?
He's calling.
Okay, you're caller number 9, it looks like.
Okay.
Right.
So Jennifer's going to change your name. Excellent. So Steve, can you say something again, and that we can make sure you have a chance?
Sure.
Okay, we
Does
can
he
hear
do
you
that?
now. Where we were, Steve, is, we were talking about this ordinance, so I think that's where you were trying to make a comment. So feel free to go ahead and say something.
Yeah, I would like a clarification, maybe in a definition. Could this document define the town's designated sewer districts? Because I don't know whether it includes the other WPCA's or not.
It
They're in
doesn't
our
include
town.
the WPCA's unless they fail to do the work that they're supposed to do, and the state forces the town to take over them, which we don't want to do and they don't want to do. I don't know if that's the right place for this to be put in this document, but I could be wrong.
A definition of what is actually under the jurisdiction of the old line WPCA?
Well, so we have a jurisdiction through the plan that Woodland Curran developed, we looked at and reviewed and submitted to the state. And that describes Soundview and miscellaneous area B.
Well, yeah, but it could grow, I guess is all I'm
Well,
saying.
if it grows, we'd have to change it and amend it.
Well, that's why it says designated sewer district, because the town can designate additional sewer districts based on this ordinance.
Okay, as long as when I read it, I assumed that the town meant the town WPCA, but reading it could encompass the other WPCA's because they're in our town.
No.
I mean, how do you get to become a designated sewer district?
You have to submit to the state, number one. You don't just say, hey, I'm on the WPCA, and you have to submit, and we already had an ordinance and our wastewater plan was part of that. So, and it's also Town of Old Lyme sanitary sewer system described in the beginning introduction, but maybe that's something we can take down and make it more clear, because if you had that misconception or concern, then maybe that's something we can add into it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I know that we're referring to our stuff, but I don't think it's necessarily that clear. I
don't think we should be doing the editing process here. If you want to clarify it, just mark up the document and send it back to me. I'd be happy to include that.
Certainly. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Other than that,
it's okay. It's all right.
Other than that, the document is and I didn't even know if I should bring it up.
No, that's okay.
The document give you a lot of credit for doing this, because it must have been pretty tedious, because it's pretty tedious to read. Never mind write.
It is, at least from my point. So do you want to set like a week's deadline to get the comments back to this before we send it off to legal? Is that enough time for you, Steve, and anyone else?
Yeah.
So by like next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday. Okay.
The 25th? Okay. Final comments on this before we move on? Okay, let's move on. Correspondence, item 5. We didn't get any direct correspondence. We did get a request for Freedom of Information requests for the mail distribution list for the letter sent to Soundview and miscellaneous area B residents for when they get the letter out. So it's the same list that's existed for all the benefit assessments discussions. It's a listing of the local property and a listing of where the tax bill goes. the deal is it was sent to the tax bill location, which sometimes is local and sometimes is not. I don't know of any other correspondence as of yesterday. So is there any questions about that correspondence that I've outlined? Okay. New business, item 6. Any new business by WPCA members they want to bring up? I don't think there's new business. Normally I request, give an advance notice so I can study the situation, and I didn't get any notice about that. So at this point, we're on item 7, public comment, and it's challenging to do this remotely. So here's what seems to be working in the past. Public comment, if you can unmute your mic and say your name, and we'll recognize you, then we'll allow you to make a public comment. We're not going to respond to the public comments during the public comment session. We may respond afterwards. I'd also ask you to keep your comments to the WPCA or the issues before us, and if you could try to be concise, that would be fantastic. So at this point, I'm going to ask Jennifer if you could unmute all the lines, and if someone could say if they want to, say their name, and we'll try and recognize them.
Hello, my name is Daniel Tricarico, 41 Hartford Avenue, Old Lyme.
Hi, Daniel. You're recognized. Go ahead, make a public comment.
Thank you. I received 2 of the letters you spoke about from Woodward and Kern for my property. I have one engineered, town-compliant, functioning septic system. Mr. Pendergrass has stated sewering costs must be fair and transparent, yet there is no plan to determine actual sewage usage. I have one water meter which can easily determine sewage usage. The vast majority of Soundview residents will soon have metered water. It is preposterous for me to accept 2 sewer lines, 2 hookups, and 2 sewer bills when I have 2 structures with the combined square footage of less than many 1 EDU homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Would anyone else make a public comment? You could just state your name and then we'll recognize you. I'm not hearing any public comments. If you're trying to make a public comment, I'll give you another chance. Looks like all the phone lines are unmuted. Okay. I think we're going to end the public comment session. At this point, Jennifer, could you go back to muting the lines and keeping the WPCA members unmuted or having their own option? So the public comment session, just for those listening into this recording or those on the conference call tonight, this is an optional thing that we don't have to do, but we feel it's important to do. We want feedback from the public. We do listen to the feedback. We're still trying to do the mission of this committee is to do the best for the entire town. And I know some residents don't appreciate or like or feel that they're being picked on, and that really is not the intention, at least not my intention, and from other committee members that I've talked to. So I thank you for your public comment. Frank, I don't know if you want to say anything else as the vice chair. Frank Chen.
Yeah, I'm Frank here. No. Just be safe and enjoy the coming weekend.
Okay. So with that, we're in the last item, which is adjournment. So may I have a motion from WPCA members to adjourn? Raise your hand and say, well, actually, I have a motion to adjourn. Somebody. So Rob and James raised their hand. I'm taking that as a motion. We'll say Rob seemed to go a little faster than James, so he's made the motion. James is seconded it. All those in favor of adjournment, raise your hand, WPCA members. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. This motion adjournment is the WPCA meeting is over. Thank you for everyone for attending. Have a good night. And as Frank said, let's all try and stay safe out there. Good night, everybody.